There's no doubt that the UFC is no stranger to controversies, especially in the light heavyweight division. Last year in 2017, Jon Jones tested positive again for PEDs, was stripped of his belt, and subsequently Daniel Cormier recovered it. And now he is the current light heavyweight champion. And this Saturday at UFC 220, the co-main event pits Daniel Cormier versus Volkan Oezdemir. I'm Andrew Michael Stone. That's Adam Dakk, the MMA mastermind. It's been a little while, but we're back. And am I forgetting something?
You're forgetting the main event.
Oh, that's what it is.
Francis Ngannou, Stipe Miocic. What a fight.
Oh yeah, somebody is going down. Someone is going lights out, and it's not going to be in the 5th round with 2 heavyweights, 2 heavy hitters. Someone's going to get knocked out, I think.
There's no other way around it.
All
Somebody's taking a nap.
Okay, so let's look at the light heavyweight division. Daniel Cormier, obviously, right now, it's a bit of a feel-good story for somebody who's actually, he's 38 years old, and he might be nearing the end of his career, but he has an opportunity to take on an opponent like Volkan Oezdemir, who's a pretty good striker.
Well, look, Volkan Oezdemir looks like he popped out of nowhere, right? He's had 3 fights in the UFC within almost a year. He went to a decision with Oezdemir and then had 2 unbelievable knockouts, one over Misha Shirkinov, and then he obliterated Jimmy Manuwa in fashion that we have not seen in a while.
Absolutely. So let's start with, out of respect, of course, to the champion of the light heavyweight division, Daniel Cormier. He has 3 keys to victory that Adam wants to share with you guys.
Well, first off, as usual, we know how much of a great wrestler he is. He's an Olympic wrestler, so I expect him to use those skills. And I also want him to be top heavy. Once he gets on an opponent, he likes to stick on people the way flies stick on... Can I say shit?
You can say shit.
Okay, so flies on shit. And finally, I don't want him to underestimate Volkan's power as well. We haven't seen too much of Volkan, especially in the last 2 fights. They were short fights, finished in the 1st round. So we don't have a whole lot of background on what to base the capabilities of Volkan Oezdemir.
That's right. And obviously there is a bit of a height advantage. There is a reach advantage both with the arms and the legs. So what does Volkan Oezdemir have to do in order to bring it?
Well, look, I obviously don't want him to give his back to the cage, and I want him also to move constantly, because any opportunity for Daniel to take you down, he will use it. And let me tell you something, Daniel Cormier will burn you out. He embraces the grind. This is what he does. And I also think that Volkan must really be praying right now that Daniel Cormier has a tough weight cut.
Well, that's the way it's going to be, but it's going to be really interesting to see how those guys match each other, because they have 2 radically different styles. I'm not saying Daniel Cormier can't strike. We saw what he did against Jon Jones quite a bit. But the question is, who do you have?
Look, I'm going to have to give it to the current champ, Daniel Cormier. I think I'm going to see something similar to what we saw with Anthony Johnson, a submission, probably a rear naked choke of some sort. Round 3, maybe round 4, and that's it.
Okay, I'm going to have to go with Oezdemir, because you know me, and I've said it a million times on the Stone on Sports podcast. What do I like? I like the strikers. I like the people who throw the kicks, who throw the punches as well. So I'm going to go with Oezdemir via knockout in the 3rd round.
But you may be right. Don't forget something. He was the underdog against Oezdemir. He was obviously the underdog against Misha Shirkinov and also Jimmy Manuwa. So he's the king of underdogs right now, and anything's possible when you're starting to get in the heavyweight divisions as well.
Well, that's exactly it. Speaking of the heavyweight division, we know, you know, that Stipe Miocic versus Francis Ngannou, as we mentioned earlier, is going to be a brawl.
Oh, that's hard to say. All we know is probably it's not going to go past the 2nd round. That I'm pretty certain about.
Oh, yeah. No. Someone's going down. That's for sure. It's lights off for one of those guys. The question is, who? Let's start by looking at Stipe Miocic, the current heavyweight champion. Tell me, what are his 3 keys to victory?
Look, I expect Stipe to come in a bit lighter than Francis Ngannou, so I would hope that he would use his speed as an advantage. I also want him to favor combinations. And finally, I want him to exercise all facets of MMA. I want him to keep guessing Francis Ngannou, whether it be stand-up, a clinch, wrestling, groundwork, whatever it is.
A little over 30% of Francis Ngannou's victories have come via submission, which is pretty surprising given the way that he obliterated Alistair Overeem.
Man, let me tell you something about that knockout. He could have knocked out an elephant. It doesn't matter. Or in Canada, probably our equivalent would be a grizzly bear or something.
Yeah.
Okay, nobody can survive a punch like that. I know critics were saying, yeah, but Alistair Overeem has a glass jaw. No man can survive that uppercut from hell.
In the case of Francis Ngannou, who everybody knows is a heavy hitter, what are his 3 keys to victory?
So obviously, when you look at Francis Ngannou, he's a much heavier, much better built man. So I expect him to want to pick his shots. I don't want him to get exhausted too quickly. I also want him to keep his hands high. People are talking about the strength of Francis Ngannou, but people are also forgetting that Stipe's last 4 fights have all ended by way of knockout in the first round, I believe.
Right.
And so in that case, I really want him to look for the early knockout. I believe the further the fight goes on, the more advantage I'm going to have to give to Stipe Miocic.
The only problem with him looking for the early knockout is he's probably going to have Alistair Overeem's, the image of him knocking out Alistair Overeem in his head. So as Adam is pointing out so duly, he has to be careful. He has to pick his shots. Why? Because if you're throwing punches, you're wasting a lot more energy and you're tiring yourself out way faster than if you connect.
I just think Stipe is not really intimidated by Francis Ngannou. He's seen them all. He's fought the best of the best in the heavyweight division. And if there's one division where fights can be finished at any moment, it is the heavyweight division. These guys are weighing over 250 pounds. They're over 6 feet tall. One crack, and that's all it takes.
So do you think that one crack is going to come by the hands of Stipe Miocic?
No, I actually think I'm going to give it to Francis Ngannou. I think the story is too beautiful. I hope it's really that Cinderella story, or Cinderella man, if you want to call it that, where he gets to represent not only the nation of Cameroon, but the entire nation of Africa.
Yeah, it's an absolutely amazing story, a feel-good story for Francis Ngannou. The moment he knocked out Overeem, I tweeted that I want to see him really be well-marketed and well-promoted, and that he could potentially take out Stipe Miocic and become the greatest heavyweight in the history of the UFC. So I'm going to have to agree with the MMA mastermind, Adam Dakk, over here. Yeah, I think Francis Ngannou is going to blow everybody's minds the way he did against Overeem. This is Stone on Sports. That's Adam Dakk, the MMA mastermind. I'm Andrew Michael Stone. Don't forget, this Saturday, UFC 220 at TD Garden in Boston. Don't miss it.